The Christmas tree lights twinkled in the corner of my parents' dining room. Bing Crosby crooned from the speakers. My mother's famous tiramisu sat half-eaten on fine china plates. And my entire family stared at me like I'd just grown a second head. I held up one finger, the universal sign for give me a moment, and continued my phone conversation. Yes, Rebecca, I can hear you. The county records show sole ownership since June 2015. Perfect. And the appraisal came back at $520,000? Excellent. That's a $210,000 appreciation in 10 years. My sister Vanessa's fork clattered against her plate. Her fiancé Brad looked confused, his hand still resting on hers, the 1.5-carat diamond catching the light. My father had frozen mid-chew, a piece of tiramisu suspended on his fork. My mother's face had gone from rosy-cheeked Christmas joy to ash-white panic in exactly 4.2 seconds. Thanks, Rebecca. Yes, I'll review the documents after the holiday. Have a wonderful Christmas. I ended the call and tucked my phone back into my purse, then took a deliberate sip of my Merlot. The silence stretched like taffy. Who, my mother said carefully, her voice barely above a whisper, was that? My real estate attorney, Rebecca Chen. She's been helping me with some property matters. Vanessa found her voice, shrill and sharp. What property matters? Lily, what is she talking about? I set down my wine glass with practiced calm. She's confirming that the county records show me as the sole owner of 1247 Oakmorn Drive since June 2015. The property recently appraised at $520,000, which is quite satisfying considering I purchased it for $310,000. The words hung in the air like ornaments on an invisible tree. Around us, the house felt too warm, too bright, too festive for the conversation unfolding. My father recovered first, his lawyer instincts kicking in. That's impossible. You don't own property. You live in that apartment complex on the east side. No, Dad. You think I live in that apartment complex on the east side? I actually own a 4-bedroom Craftsman with a wraparound porch, original stained glass, and a backyard with mature oak trees. Have for almost 10 years now. Vanessa laughed, but it sounded forced, brittle. This is ridiculous. Where would you get money to buy a house? You work at that boring accounting firm. You probably make, what, $40,000 a year? $127,000, actually, I corrected. Plus annual bonuses averaging $18,000. I'm a senior tax consultant now. Have been for 3 years. Before that, I was a tax consultant for 4 years, and before that, a junior consultant for 3 years. The numbers seemed to bounce off them like they were speaking a foreign language. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her wine. Lily, this doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you tell us you bought a house? That's a huge milestone. We're your family. I met her eyes steadily. Am I? Because family usually knows where each other lives. Family asks about each other's careers. Family doesn't assume the worst about each other's life choices. That's not fair, Vanessa snapped. We've been busy with my wedding planning. For 18 months, I interrupted. You've been planning your wedding for 18 months. Before that, it was your promotion to assistant store manager. Before that, it was your new boyfriend. Before that, it was your apartment hunt. There's always something, Vanessa. And it's always about you. Brad shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. Smart man. My father's voice took on that courtroom edge I knew so well. Lily, if this is true, and I'm not saying I believe it is, where did you get the money for a down payment? A house that expensive would require at least $60,000 down. I put down $93,000. 20% plus closing costs. I took another sip of wine, savoring both the Merlot and the moment. I saved it from my salary, bonuses, and investment returns over 3 years. Impossible, my mother said flatly. Nobody saves that much that quickly. Not at your age. I did. I lived in a modest apartment, drove a used car, packed my lunch every day, and invested 30% of my income. It's called discipline. You might recognize the concept if you'd ever bothered to ask about my financial habits instead of assuming I was frivolous. The barb landed. My mother had spent the last hour before dinner lamenting about Vanessa's wedding costs, $45,000 for a single day, most of it funded by my parents. Meanwhile, they'd never once asked about my financial situation, my goals, or my plans. Vanessa's face had progressed from shocked to angry. So what, you've just been sitting on this information for 10 years? Playing some kind of long game to make us look stupid? No, Vanessa. I've been living my life. A life you never asked about. A life that apparently never mattered enough for any of you to notice. We notice you, my father protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Do you? Dad, what did I do for my 30th birthday? He faltered. You had dinner with friends. I closed on my house. June 15, 2015. It was the biggest day of my life. I called to tell you. You said that's nice, honey, and spent 20 minutes talking about Vanessa's new promotion. My mother's eyes glistened with tears. Lily, that's not, we didn't mean. I know you didn't mean it. That's almost worse. I pushed back from the table slightly. You didn't intentionally ignore me. I just wasn't important enough to remember. Wasn't exciting enough to pay attention to. Wasn't Vanessa. That's not true, Vanessa said, but even she sounded uncertain now. Isn't it? Vanessa, how many times have Mom and Dad visited your apartment? She shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. A lot. 23 times in the 4 years you've lived there. I counted from Mom's Facebook posts. She photographs your place every time, tags the location, writes little captions about visiting our baby girl. I paused. Want to know how many times they've asked to see where I live? Silence. 0. Not once in 10 years. Not even when I mentioned having a housewarming party. Not even when I said I was renovating the kitchen. Not even when I posted a photo of my Christmas decorations last year with the caption Home Sweet Home, and a clear view of a very nice living room that was definitely not an apartment. My mother's tears spilled over. We saw that photo. We thought maybe you were house-sitting or something. For a year? I posted seasonal photos from that house for a year, Mom. Fall decorations. Halloween. Thanksgiving. Christmas. New Year's. Spring garden. Summer barbecue. You saw all of them. You liked them. You never asked. The truth of it settled over the table like snow, cold, heavy, undeniable. Brad cleared his throat. Maybe we should give you guys some privacy. No, I said. Stay. You're marrying into this family. You should know what you're getting into. Vanessa's hand tightened on his. Lily, stop being dramatic. So we didn't know about your house. Big deal. You kept it secret. I didn't keep it secret. My voice rose for the first time, then immediately lowered again. Control. Always maintain control. I told you. Multiple times. You just never listened. There's a difference. My father set down his fork with deliberate precision. What do you want from us, Lily? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry we didn't realize you bought a house. There. Can we move past this now? Move past it. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dad, this isn't just about the house. The house is a symptom. It's about 10 years of being the invisible daughter. The boring one. The one who didn't need attention because Vanessa needed it so much more. I never asked for that, Vanessa protested. I know. That's what makes it so insidious. Nobody did anything wrong, exactly. You just all forgot I existed as anything other than a supporting character in Vanessa's story. My mother reached across the table toward me. Lily, please. We love you. We're proud of you. We didn't know what I was accomplishing. I know. Because you never asked. I pulled out my phone, opening my photo gallery. This is my house. The one I've owned for 10 years. The one I've renovated extensively. The one I've hosted Thanksgiving in for the past 3 years. I slid the phone across the table. They stared at the images, a beautiful craftsman home with period details, modern updates, a garden I'd cultivated myself. A life fully realized in a space they'd never seen. 3 years, my mother whispered. You've been hosting Thanksgiving. For my friends. People from work, book club, the volunteer organization I'm part of. 20 people last year. We had a wonderful time. But we have Thanksgiving here, Vanessa said. You've been coming here every year. No, I came 3 years ago. The last time. Since then, I've said I have other plans. You all assumed it was work. Nobody asked for details. Nobody invited me to reschedule. You just moved on without me. The realization was dawning on their faces, how many times I'd said I have plans, and they'd accepted it without question. How many invitations I'd declined that they'd never followed up on. How many gaps in their knowledge of my life that they'd never thought to fill. My father's voice was hoarse. The attorney. Your real estate attorney. Why were you talking to her on Christmas? Because I'm considering selling the property. Moving to Seattle. I've been offered a position with a prestigious firm there, managing director level. $185,000 base salary plus profit sharing. The numbers hit them like physical blows. Seattle. My mother's voice cracked. But that's across the country. Yes. It is. When? My father asked. I'd start in March. I've been interviewing since September. I have 2 other offers, one in Denver, one in Austin. I'm deciding between the 3. Vanessa stared at me like I was a stranger. You've been planning to move away for months and you didn't tell us. Why would I? You didn't know where I lived now. Why would you care where I lived next? The cruelty of it, the simple, factual cruelty, seemed to cut deeper than any anger could have. My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. I need a moment. She fled to the kitchen, her sobs audible even from the dining room. My father followed her. Brad excused himself to check his phone in the other room. And suddenly, it was just Vanessa and me, sitting across from each other at the Christmas table, surrounded by the wreckage of assumptions and ignorance. I didn't know, Vanessa said quietly. Lily, I swear I didn't know any of this. I know. That's the problem. I'm not a bad sister. I never said you were. You're just the main character. And I've been okay being the side character. Until I realized I was writing my own story all along, and none of you were even reading it. She was crying now, mascara running down her carefully made-up face. What do we do? How do we fix this? I don't know if you can. I stood, gathering my purse and coat. I've built an entire life separate from this family. A good life. A successful life. And I did it because I had to, because there was no room for me here. Don't leave, Vanessa pleaded. It's Christmas. It's just another day, Vanessa. And I have somewhere else to be. Where? My house. The one you've never seen. Some friends are coming over at 8. We're exchanging gifts, watching movies, actually enjoying each other's company. I walked toward the door, past the Christmas tree with presents underneath, including the ones I'd brought, expensive gifts chosen carefully for people who'd never bought me anything that reflected actual knowledge of who I was. My father intercepted me at the door, my mother beside him, her eyes red and swollen. Lily, please. Don't go. Not like this. We can talk about this. We can do better. Can you? I met his eyes, then my mother's. Can you name 3 things I accomplished this year? They looked at each other helplessly. I got the CPA designation I've been working toward for 2 years. I was featured in a national accounting journal for my work on tax optimization strategies. I ran a marathon and raised $8,000 for children's literacy. I paused. You didn't know any of that, did you? No, my mother whispered. But we want to know. We want to be part of your life. Do you? Or do you just feel guilty now that you realize how much you've missed? Both, my father said honestly. Both, Lily. We feel terrible. And we want to do better. I considered this, weighing their words against 10 years of evidence to the contrary. Maybe. Someday. But not today. Today, I need to be somewhere I'm actually seen. At least tell us where you're going, my mother begged. The address. Please. I pulled out my phone, texted them the address, the one that had been in my email signature, on every holiday card I'd sent, in my social media profiles they'd never looked at closely. There. You have it. You've always had it, in one form or another. You just never looked. I walked out into the cold December night, leaving behind the warmth and the lights and the family that had somehow forgotten I was more than wallpaper. My phone buzzed as I drove away. Text from Vanessa, I'm sorry. I really am sorry. Another from my mother, please come back. We need you. One from my father, your mother and I are coming to see your house tomorrow. We should have asked years ago. I turned my phone face down and drove toward Oakmorn Drive, toward the house I'd built without them, toward the friends who actually knew me, toward the life I'd created from scratch. 3 months later, my parents had visited my house twice. The first time, my mother cried when she saw what I'd built, the renovated kitchen with commercial-grade appliances, the library I'd created in the spare bedroom, the garden with the vegetable beds and flower borders. The second time, they brought photo albums, trying to prove they'd cared all along. But the photos told the real story, hundreds of Vanessa, dozens of family events I'd attended and been cropped out of or relegated to the background of. I was there, technically. Just not really there. I accepted the job in Seattle. $185,000 plus profit sharing, a corner office, and a team of 6 reporting to me. My house sold in 2 weeks for $535,000. $225,000 profit that would fund my new life beautifully. The night before I left, Vanessa came over. Just her, no parents, no Brad. We sat on my empty living room floor, surrounded by boxes, and talked for 4 hours. Really talked, maybe for the first time since we were kids. I wish I'd been a better sister, she said. I wish I'd demanded more space, I replied. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. But it was acknowledgement. It was both of us seeing clearly for the first time how our family dynamics had shaped us, limited us, defined us. As I drove away from the city where I'd grown up, where I'd been invisible and then become undeniable, I thought about ownership. Not just of property, but of identity, of worth, of space in the world and in people's hearts. I'd owned that house for 10 years. But I'd owned myself for far longer. And that ownership of self, was the only deed that really mattered. The rearview mirror showed the city lights fading. Ahead, Seattle waited, glittering with possibility. Ownership has a name, mine. And finally, everyone knew it.